folks, welcome back to another episode of Coffee, Tea, and Crime. Today, open door on the loading dock, the Royal Oaks post office shooting. It's November 14th, 1991. On this day, there would be a mass shooting at the United States Post Office located at 200 West 2nd Street in Royal Oak, Michigan. It involved a disgruntled former postal worker. Now, I believe this was the third shooting at a post office within a 5-year period. Now, this employee had been suspended once for fighting with a customer on his route. He'd had several disputes with postal managers, and he was dismissed for what postal officials termed insubordination. Now, he appealed his dismissal through a union grievance. Now, he lost that arbitration hearing, which made his dismissal final. Now, that's according to a shop steward there for the letter carriers union. Now, this disgruntled employee, he'd been a mail carrier, and he told his friends it was the perfect job for him because he worked outdoors and he didn't have any bosses looking over his shoulder. Now, he was fired on July 31st, 1990. Now, it was for calling the supervisor and cursing him. Now, some employees at that post office said that the suspect had been singled out and had been written up repeatedly for baloney type things. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the suspect, he filed a grievance and he pursued arbitration to get his job back. Now, that took place in October of 1991. It lasted 2 days. Now, allegedly during this hearing, the suspect told a union official that if he didn't get reinstated, he'd make the 1986 Edmond post office shooting look like Disneyland. Now, that shooting in Edmond, Oklahoma, where 14 employees have been shot and killed by a disgruntled postal employee, was the first in a series of shootings at post offices. And it was that shooting in Edmond, Oklahoma that the term going postal had first come up. Now, one of the suspect's supervisors had actually pressed criminal charges against the suspect for threats he'd made. Now, the suspect was acquitted by a jury in early 1991. And in fact, that case there would lead to the suspect having his gun permit revoked. Now, word had spread to the employees at the Royal Oak Post Office about how irate and angry the suspect was, and they knew that the suspect was former military. So you had employees openly planning their escape routes if the suspect was to return. Now, Oakland County officials, they had been the ones that originally issued a permit for the suspect to carry a concealed weapon. During his little court case over his threats, somewhere around May 7th, the police had become concerned enough about the mental instability of the suspect that they made the recommendation, and this recommendation ultimately led to the revocation of the gun permit. Now, officials knew that the suspect had a rifle, a .357 caliber pistol. Now, an employee in the post office said that there was a new supervisor, he didn't mention him by name, said that this particular supervisor was particularly unpopular and had recently suspended a worker for whistling. Now, this report was allegedly confirmed by several other employees. This employee went on to say that management pushes and doesn't know when to quit. They don't know when someone is going to break. Another employee said they pushed the wrong guy too far. Another employee said that disgruntled or dismissed employees on several occasions had come back to the post office to fight or to throw a telephone through the window. And this employee even admitted that he had been recently acquitted on charges of threatening a postal supervisor with a knife. November 13th, 1991, the suspect found out that arbitration case had went against him and that he would not be getting his job back. Now, the suspect had actually left voice messages for one of the supervisors saying, "I'm going to blow everything up. I'll kill you too." Now, according to the resource material, multiple requests were made to the United States Postal Inspection Service. Now, that's the law enforcement arm of the Postal Service, and that request was for additional security. No security was ever sent to the Royal Oaks Post Office, according to the resource material. 8:45 a.m., November 14th, 1991, suspect walks into the post office. Now, he goes through an open door at the loading dock at the rear of the building, which obviously he'd be familiar with. And he starts cranking off rounds. Now, he's using a semi-automatic 22 caliber Ruger 1022, and he had removed the stock, so the weapon was easily concealable. Now, he shot and killed 4 employees, wounded 4 others. Then he turned the gun on himself and took his own life. Now, a fella that worked down the street from the post office, he said he was on his way to work that day, and he remembered it was warm and a pleasant day. He just dropped his child off at preschool. He's driving down 11-mile road, and he said he saw people running and screaming. He said there were police cars everywhere. This fellow said he never seen anything like that in Royal Oak. Now, when he got to work at the hardware store, he found out what had happened. He said the rest of the day that customers came in, they were tense. He was tense. Everybody was. Very quiet. And it got worse throughout the day as more information came out about the shooting. This fellow said it was very disturbing. The union steward who was at that post office, he said he heard popping sounds and people screaming. Now, he said he locked the door in the room he was in with another employee. And then just a few moments later, he heard the suspect trying to turn the doorknob. Then he heard the suspect drop a ammunition clip and load another into his rifle. Then he heard more shots fired in the office next to the one he was in. Now, according to this shop steward, he said it was a preventable tragedy. He described the post office as a hostile work environment, and management never admitted anything went down. He said it's been 30 years and no one was ever held accountable. He said for years he tried to bring some light to what he described as overly aggressive actions by some managers to increase production among workers, along with other harassment. He went on to say that tension between the workers and the managers in the workplace at that post office had sparked a Postal Service investigation. He said that investigation was underway when the shooting occurred. Now, the 4 employees killed, one was an injury compensation specialist, another was the manager of the branch operations, third was a labor relations assistant, and the 4th was a postal supervisor. Now, that's in addition to the 7 employees that were injured either by gunfire or trying to escape the gunfire.